know you can look me in the eye. It's all because of Jesus, he the reason I'm alive. I live by faith, by grace, you know that I ain't gotta strive. They told me tone it down.
Secondary clap.
Gotta have it. Yo, what's up, guys? This is Jared. I'm Ryan. Welcome to the Boat Parade. We got another segment of what is so far our fan favorite series.
But this is different slightly.
This is like a B, of the series.
This is Meet the Boys free agent signings, not draft picks.
Like a custom series. We're getting fancy here. It's a Meet
Custom.
the Boys free agent signing series. New, special. It's hot. You got to check it out today.
All right, let's dive into it.
Let's dive
Today,
into it.
We're talking Akiem Hicks. And I want to talk about Akiem Hicks. Obviously, the signing happened a while ago. But something recently happened that really sparked me to want to talk about it. But Akiem Hicks, he signed as a free agent, as a D-tackle coming from the Chicago Bears.
Chirac.
And when he signed, it was originally speculated that this is a possible replacement for Ndamukong Suh if he decides not to come back. And it seems like, obviously, Ndamukong Suh, interesting dude, and he got a little bit offended at the fact that they signed the defensive tackle when he wasn't communicating his intentions. So then he said publicly, well, it looks like the Bucs don't want me, so now everybody's saying he's going to go to Vegas. We'll see what happens with that.
Which is not, in my opinion, it's kind of like it's kind of a immature, kind of childlike. Like the Bucs are making the best decision for their team. You're a part of that team, and then you want to go throw a fit.
Well, I'm not going to throw shade at Ndamukong Suh because he could literally kill me. But he signed Akiem Hicks. He signed a 1-year deal worth $6.5 million guaranteed, and then per game incentives that would equal that to $8 million if he hits all those incentives. So he's a 32-year-old veteran, originally from Sacramento, California, where he stayed at home and played JUCO for Sacramento City College. So coming from the JUCO level, he was like one of the higher-rated JUCO players. He originally signed to play at LSU in the 2009 season, but then there was recruiting violations, so he was ineligible for that season. So then ultimately he decided, hey, I'm just going to keep continuing my college career, and then went and played at a college in Saskatchewan, Canada, and then played there. And he had offers to go play in the Canadian Football League, and he said, nope, I'm going to keep going and playing in college. So he kept playing, and then he was drafted in the third round of the 2012 NFL draft by the New Orleans Saints, where he played there for 4 seasons.
Dang, that was 10 years ago.
He played in 48 games, and he would rack up 108 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 3 passes defended, and a forced fumble during those 4 seasons. Then in 2015, he was traded to the New England Patriots. And just throwing it out there, if it's somebody that Bill Belichick's going after, he's probably a special guy. So he played there for 1 season. Played in 13 games, only had 21 tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble, but had a scoop and score touchdown versus the Tennessee Titans, so that's interesting. Then he signed in 2016 with the Chicago Bears. And what I was reading as I was looking into Hicks's background is that the Bears were very sad to lose him. He was actually the former GM for the Bears, touted as one of his greatest free agent signings that he had. So there, he played in Chicago in 77 games, had 247 combined tackles, 31 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles. So he's 6'5", 324 pounds, and I think that he's definitely a good replacement for Suh. And then we'll get into the numbers in a little bit. I think it compares very well. Obviously, Ndamukong Suh, he's 6'4", he's something like 315, so pretty comparable size-wise, but Akiem Hicks is larger. So let's talk about some of their stats, because that's obviously like, okay, well, what are they going to do on the field? So Hicks has played in 20 fewer games than Ndamukong Suh over the past 6 years. But during those 6 years, Suh has 44 more combined tackles, but Akiem Hicks has 2.5 more sacks and 2 forced fumbles in 20 less games.
Wow.
So if you're talking about the everyday tackle and assisting tackles, like you could say that Ndamukong Suh is definitely better. But in a shorter period of time, he had those what in football they refer to as splash plays. What's going to make the biggest splash in the water? He's having those forced fumbles, those sacks, tackle for losses. And that's like what you want out of a defensive lineman. Yes, the tackles may not always come for a defensive lineman, because if you're just big on big and you're taking up a man or two, then now you allow your linebackers to come and make the tackles, which is really the Bucs style of play. That's why one of the linebackers, Levante David, he's recorded over 100 tackles in a season, which only 16 people in history have done in the NFL.
Such a wild stat.
That's the Bucs style. Hey, you take up your offensive lineman, you let the linebackers scrape over the top and get there and make the play. From watching some film and some highlights on Hicks, he's really great with his hands, which is what you want to see out of a defensive lineman. Very explosive. He has a fast get off and immediately engages, gets his hands on the offensive lineman,
right, and
then has the strength and size and mobility to then get off of the block. He gets great penetration and then gets down the line and then can scrape to make the tackle. That's really what I saw over and over from him. And I think that's how he has even more sacks than Ndamukong Suh. Obviously, people kind of game plan towards Suh and will double team him more. But if you have like Vita Vea, Will Golston, and guys like that you're tag teaming them up in the front, like you can't double team all those guys. So some of these guys are going to be able to get free and be able to make those plays. Overall, Ryan, what I would say is that I kept on seeing over and over that when he signed with the Bucs, Bears fans were sad to lose him. And that tells me that this is a good player to have on the team. If somebody was like, yeah, we'll replace him with somebody else, then that's like, okay, what are we doing? But if they're like, dang, he really would have been great to keep in Chicago, that tells me that this guy's great, and he's going to be a great addition onto the defensive line with the other guys, as I just mentioned. And I think it's going to be a good replacement for Ndamukong Suh. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I like about bringing in really experienced players is then they get an opportunity coming from a different perspective than being kind of a Bucs-rooted player to teach and influence younger guys on the team. So obviously when you bring in young guys, they get to shadow under kind of these old guys. Or if you bring in decently kind of moderately experienced guys, they already have their own way of doing things and they're just kind of fitting into a system. But when you have a guy who has a decade of experience in the NFL, 6 years with Chicago, and they liked him, when he comes in, he provides a lot of perspective and experience, even in the locker room, that's valuable to the team. And so I think I love seeing this kind of thing. I mean, like I said, Suh's a great player. He provided a lot for us, but I think there's a lot more off the ball that value in bringing in somebody with a decade of experience, coming from a city like Chicago, can just kind of provide, like I said, some perspective even in the locker room. And I think there's such a cool dynamic. Something I love about this segment that we're doing with Meet the Boys is that we're diving into a lot of relationships and dynamics you see in football teams that people don't really understand. Right? It's like in the locker room.
Like the locker room, and if like we have mentioned several times on this show about Pat McAfee, and he's somebody that's been in an NFL locker room. I've only been in a locker room on the collegiate level, but having a locker room that is functional as a family is a huge factor in your team's success. So I think, like you're saying, having those mature veteran guys to be able to teach those young defensive linemen like a Logan Hall is huge, and we'll see the benefit of that in having a positive locker room. You don't want a guy that's going to break up the locker room. Big factor.
And I mean, something just to close off this segment, we, Akiem and all these other guys that we're kind of welcoming in, Tampa Bay and the Bucs, I think we pride ourselves in being a city that has open arms to anybody. I don't think Tampa Bay's like, no, we don't want you to come here. I think we're excited for anybody that the team thinks can play a role. We appreciate you coming to the city. I think you're going to love Tampa, definitely more than Chicago, and you're going to have a lot of fun here. And so welcome to the family.
Definitely warmer.
It's definitely warmer. The people are warmer, and we have boat parades. So
there you go.
Welcome
Let's
to
get
the
one
family.
this year.
You know you can look me in the eye. It's all because of Jesus. He the reason I'm alive. I live by faith, by grace. You know that I ain't gotta strive. They told me tone it down.